Llywodraeth Cymru wedi'i wneud o'r ddyfarniad Llys Cyfiawnder Ewrop ynghylch torri rheolau dŵr glân yng Nghymru gan gynnwys Nghilfach Tywyn, Llanelli.
We acknowledge the ruling. We will continue to work with Natural Resources Wales and Cymru Welsh Water on a £130 million programme for Llanelli and Gowerton to reduce the number of spills, improve water quality and reduce the risk of local flooding by 2020.
I thank the Minister for stepping in the breach once again and responding on behalf of the Minister for the Cabinet Secretary for Environment. I think the best response to this decision of the European Court of Justice may be how dare the EU tell us we can't bathe in our own sewage, because that's what it boils down to. It's taken the EU Court of Justice to tell the UK Government that the 3,000 overflow pipes that we have in Wales still today that can discharge sewage direct into our water when we have heavy rain, and heavy rain does happen in Wales. It might not have happened quite recently, but it does happen in Wales. And the 14 overflow pipes specifically at Bury Inlet do break EU law and are actually polluting our bathing water and the habitat as well for tens of thousands of wild birds, for example, around the salt marshes at Bury Port. The cockling industry particularly has always felt that the pollution at Bury Inlet is affecting cockle death. That's not been proven, but there's a strong correlation between these events and the death of that industry and the economic effect and traditional sort of effect on lifestyles in parts of the inlet and the estuary. Now, specifically, I've seen Welsh Water's Rainscape project in Llanelli and Bury Port. There are improvements going on there. I welcome very much what they're trying to do. But the UK argument, which it lost in the European Court of Justice, was that these improvements were good enough for the year 2020. So I want to know, does the Welsh Government also think that it's good enough to improve by 2020? Because the European Court of Justice thinks we should do it more quickly. And since the European Court of Justice does think we should do it more quickly, what specifically now is the Welsh Government doing to ensure that we don't have dirty bathing water and dirty habitat water anymore in Wales?
I thank Simon Thomas for the question, and in response to those specific points, the Welsh Government has been working with Natural Resources Wales and Cymru Welsh Water to develop and implement a programme of work to reduce the number of spills, further improve water quality and reduce the risk of local flooding by the end of 2020. I've obviously mentioned the £113 million investment. And it is important that to report again today how closely engagement with local residents, local businesses, as well as elected representatives have been in the area, working hard to minimise disruption to residents, which of course will, as a result of the investment of the funding, but of course the age of the current infrastructure system in the local area is clearly has to be addressed. I think it is important to recognise that the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive was adopted back in 1991, vital in terms of the steer towards assessing quality. It's implemented and enforced principally now through devolved matters, and that those concerns were raised by representatives of the cocklers and local councillors and various parties in Llanelli and Gower about water quality, and therefore clearly this ruling in terms of the court on 4th of May, there has to be a very clear and robust response.
Lee Waters.
Diolch, Llywodraeth Minister. It's now been 12 years since the cocklers of the Bury Inlet have reported significant die-offs of shellfish, and we still don't know the cause of these deaths. We do, however, of its economic impact. An export industry has been devastated, and local cocklers are now struggling to make even a basic living. 6 years ago, courts found against Welsh Water, and now they found again against the UK Government. Would the Government look again at this and consider helping this devastated local industry as it has helped other industries?
I thank Lee Waters for that question, and clearly the importance of understanding and identifying the reasons why there has been that increased cockle mortality is vital. And in fact, the Welsh Government commissioned research into this. As you will be aware, findings did show water quality in the area was unlikely to be the cause of problems experienced by the cockle industry, but engagement with the cockle industry, the cocklers themselves and their representatives, and, as I said, local elected representatives and business has been vital in addressing this and making sure that action is taken. I think it's also important to recognise that Cymru Welsh Water undertook monitoring and developed a programme of works to reduce the number of spills. I've already mentioned this. For example, the wastewater treatment storm tank assets in Llanelli and Gowerton, which you will be aware of, spills occurred much more frequently, and whilst they conform to UK's current urban wastewater treatment directive implementation, they were in excess of what the Commission would consider to be acceptable under the Commission. So I think, again, I hope that the evidence of engagement locally, the action taken, the investment by 2020, Rainscape, of course, ensuring that this can be addressed, will reassure those in the community and the businesses, and particularly in terms of the cocklers, and enable, of course, the water quality to be improved and the risk of flooding to be reduced.
Susie Davis.
Diolch, Llywydd. Well, I agree that it's very disappointing that these breaches have taken place and that there's been a second court ruling now on exactly the same issue. And NRW may well be right that the resolution of the problem is difficult. But bearing in mind it's not just breaches of the law that we're talking about, but serious changes to the ecology of this area, I don't think that it's particularly appropriate to pin, so to say, all the blame on NRW and Welsh Water in this. Now, Welsh Water, of course, does insist that the breach isn't the cause of cockle deaths that have already been raised here, and it may well be the case, but it has been 5 years since that parasitology report that you've referred to obliquely, Leader of the House. And that report didn't talk necessarily straightforwardly about water quality, but said that, that parasites weren't the sole reason for any mortalities. So we're talking about 5 years ago. Since that time, NRW has kept what it's called an overview of the science. There's a plethora of research initiatives, either at application or final bid stage. So in short, it strikes me that since 2012, it doesn't seem there's been an awful lot of intervention trying to maintain what is potentially still a profitable local industry, and obviously one of local cultural significance as well. Would it be fair for me to say that perhaps the focus on infrastructure that you've referred to in some of your answers today has been at the expense of scientific research which could have solved the problem regarding the cockles? Thank you.
I think in terms of looking at the not only outcome of the research, but then that which had an impact on the works that were to be undertaken, the £113 million investment, I would say that this consists largely of environmentally friendly, sustainable drainage techniques that improve the quality of the local environment and reduce the risk of flooding locally in terms of those works. And also to say that despite the ruling by the court on the 4th of May, the quality of the shellfish water in the area has consistently met statutory standards since 2000. But I think the importance of the response now in terms of addressing this issue, as laid down by the court, is of a priority not only to Welsh Water but also to the Welsh Government. And NRW will be monitoring that.
Diolch i'r arweinydd y tŷ. Y cwestiwn nesaf gan Llyr Gruffydd.
Diolch, Llywydd. Beth yw asesiad Llywodraeth Cymru o effaith y diswyddiadau posibl ym Mhrifysgol Aberystwyth?
Diolch, Llyr. Universities in Wales are autonomous bodies. As such, responsibility for staffing matters rests solely with Aberystwyth University. The Welsh Government has no locus in this matter. But of course, I understand that the university is in discussions with members of staff and the trade unions about proposals for a review of its staffing structures.
Wel, diolch i chi am eich ateb. Mae'r Brifysgol, wrth gwrs, wedi cyfeirio at y gystadleuaeth am fyfyrwyr gostyngiad o 8% ynghylchiadau astudio yng Nghymru a Brexit ymhlith ffactor eraill sydd yn dylanwadu ar y sefyllfa maen nhw'n ffindio hunain ynddo fe. Ond y pwynt pwysig i fi fan hyn, wrth gwrs, yw nid un achos sydd gyda ni, ond wrth gwrs, ni wedi clywed yn yr wythnosau diwetha am Mhrifysgol Cymru yn sôn am leihau staffio rhyw 4.6%, Mhrifysgol Dryndod Dewi Sant yn sôn am doriadau hyd at 10%, a nhwythau hefyd yn cyfeirio at nifer o'r un ffactorau. Nawr, mae cynrychiolwyr Undeb Unsain wedi dweud bod rhaid i'r Llywodraeth ystyried pecyn o opsiynau ymyrryd yn y sefyllfa yma mwyn amddiffyn swyddi'r gweithwyr heng flaen. Gai ofyn, ydy'r ysgrifennydd Cabinet dros addysg felly yn cyfaddau nawr bod ganddo ni argyfwng yn y sector addysg uwch o safbwynt ariannu a staffio, ac bod diwygiadau yma wrth gwrs yn mynd rhagddyn nhw, bod angen i'r Llywodraeth ymyrryd arfyrder cyn i'r sefyllfa yma weithiogi ymhellach.
Thank you, Claire. As I've said, all universities, including Aberystwyth and the other institutions that you have mentioned, are autonomous bodies. And therefore, we do not have, as I've said previous, locus in this area. I am aware that the higher education sector in Wales is facing a number of challenges, not least in some institutions, a failure to meet their recruitment targets for students. And of course, you mentioned Brexit, which is posing a significant challenge to the HE sector. As a government, we moved very quickly to try and reassure international students, both from within the European Union and out of the European Union, that they are very welcome to study here in Wales. We continue to make swift decisions about the availability of financial packages for European students to be able to study here in Wales. I have set up a working group that looks specifically at what we can do to support the HE sector as we move through Brexit negotiations, and the HE sector is also represented of the First Minister's group. I continue to make representations to the previous Westminster government about a range of measures it could take to assist us in this area. It is a disgrace that neither Wales nor Scotland's administration were consulted with regards to the issue of a pilot post-study work visa scheme. We would have benefited from that in Wales, as would colleagues in Scotland, and I would be very keen for the UK government to look again at that issue. It's also very clear to me that we need to exclude foreign students as part of the government's continued obsession with immigration figures. We have a higher education sector here in Wales which is strong enough and good enough to sell to the world. They are beacons of excellence, and we need an immigration regime developed by the UK government that does not make it harder for international students to avail themselves of the opportunities that we have in our universities and colleges here in Wales. I understand that HEFCU, as the sponsoring body and the funding body for higher education, continues to be in close touch with Aberystwyth University, indeed all our universities.
Diolch, Llywydd, and I thank Llyr for raising this and topical questions. And it's part of the issues around this were discussed at our cross-party group on universities back on the 1st of February, and that's what I want to focus on for the moment, because the Cabinet Secretary is right. We do have a world-class offer here, but something is going wrong, and I just want to touch on this briefly. We know that in Wales, our education exports to international students is worth around 530 million, 4% of Welsh exports in its entirety, that our international students currently are supporting over 7,500 jobs at Welsh universities, but also around Wales, not in the university themselves. But we have had a drop of 26% in non-EU students at Welsh universities since 2013-14 intake, and this is compared to 4% decrease in UK overall, and the Russell Group and Scotland University. So we have a particular issue, and this is despite a world-class offer in Welsh universities, and this is despite the fact that the cost of living and tuition fees here in Wales is much more affordable. But we do know, and the Cabinet Secretary is right, international studies now are showing that the UK is now regarded as the least affordable place to study for undergraduates and graduates when compared to New Zealand, Australia, Canada and USA. We've got to do a lot more in marketing. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, what can we do to market the Welsh university sector better, have a more welcoming immigration and visa policy offer, and boost the recruitment of international students. It's not the sole way we turn this round, but it's an important way that we meet those challenges and turn round this and boost our number of international students.
Thank you, Hugh. As you say, it's not the only issue that we need to consider, but it is an important one. Just prior to Christmas, I hosted a quadrilateral meeting of UK ministers who have responsibility in this area and repeated all the points I've just made to Llyr Gruffydd to Joe Johnson, the then Minister with responsibility for higher education. Who knows whether he will retain that position after the elections in June. I believe that Joe Johnson understands exactly the kind of immigration system that the UK government needs to put in place to support the higher education sector, both in Wales and beyond Wales. Unfortunately, he is battling with a Home Office that doesn't share that understanding and share that ambition. But you're right. We cannot simply wring our hands and blame it on other people. We must get up off our knees and do what we can to support the sector ourselves. That's why I am very keen to discuss with my Cabinet colleague, the Minister for the Economy, for instance, when his department are on trade missions across the world, then education should be a part of that. As you've rightly said, we have a strong offer here in many areas, but we shouldn't just be talking to foreign countries about our manufacturing offer or indeed our airport, but we should also be talking to them about our strong HE base that we have here, and I'm sure that we can make progress on this area.
Simon Thomas.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Of course, the Cabinet Secretary is right. She's not responsible for staffing matters. However, she is primarily responsible for the fiscal framework in which Welsh universities operate. Her party was responsible for trebling tuition fees 5 years ago. That had a real effect in Aberystwyth University. Significantly fewer English students now attend Aberystwyth University, not because the universities got any worse, but because the English universities, under the trebling tuition fee system, are now chasing themselves for English students, particularly the ones from more deprived backgrounds, and there are attractive incentives for them to study in England with the money in the English education system. She has a proposal before her, of course, in the Diamond Review to try and, I hope, repatriate some of the money that we currently send over our border back into the university system, but that will not come on stream for at least 2 years and even in full in about 5 years. And Aberystwyth University is proposing cuts over the next 2 years. It's this actual gap between where we are today and where we could be under Diamond that is the problem for a university like Aberystwyth and the other universities that have announced similar cuts over the last few weeks. She complains about the visas. She's right to complain about them. We've all complained about them. But again, 5 years in her party in government for 5 years, Vince Cable and Clegg did not change the visa regime in those 5 years. So I think there's a lot of hand-wringing going on here this afternoon, but it's a real university facing real problems and over 100 people facing possible redundancies. What's needed from the Welsh Government is a clear signal of sustainability going forward. We have Diamond coming on stream, but it's not in effect yet. What are you going to do over the next 2 years to ensure there's sustainability in the HE sector in Wales, and specifically whether there's support for Aberystwyth University to ensure it does not slip down the rankings or does not lose its ability to compete in the HE market?
Could I inform the member that latest forecasts show that in 2015-2016, £50 million more funding came into the Welsh HE system that went in tuition fee grants to institutions outside of Wales. Now, our Diamond reforms will help secure the future stability and the sustainability of the sector here in Wales. And my remit letter to HEFCW confirmed that I fully expect future financial settlements for HEFCW to increase in each financial year for the lifetime of this government. I'm surprised that Simon Thomas has taken this very serious situation for the people working in Aberystwyth to turn it into political point scoring. I would remind the member that there are people's livelihoods at risk here, which are very serious. And if we are to make it political, I would remind the member that he, on many occasions, stands there in his seat and urges the Welsh Government to disinvest in HE and invest in FE itself. And I have never heard this member ask in his budget negotiations for more money for the HE sector.
Datganiadau 90 eiliad yw'r eitem nesaf ar yr agenda. Jane Bryant.